Oh hi. Canberra, the capital of Australia, the largest internal city of the country. The population of Canberra with the satellite town of Queanbeyan as city agglomeration Canberra, Queanbeyan makes 432,141 persons. 2016. The city is the administrative centre of the Australian Capital Territory, which includes also small agricultural zone and national park of Namoshi. In 250 km to the northeast from Canberra there is Sydney, and in 450 km to the southwest Melbourne. In 1908 the territory of modern Canberra was chosen as future capital of the Australian Union that became a compromise between two largest cities of the country competing among themselves for this status, Sydney and Melbourne. After the held international competition on the best design, the plan of the Chicago architects Walter Burley Griffin and Marion Mahoney Griffin was taken as a basis of future construction which began in 1913. The basis of design of Canberra was formed by the concept of the garden city, assuming extensive zones of natural vegetation because of what Australians nicknamed the capital of bush capital. In translation from English, the shrubby capital. In spite of the fact the growth and development of the city were interfered by World War I and the Great Depression, after World War II Canberra became the prospering city. Being the residence of the Australian government, Canberra is a place where are located Parliament of Australia, the Supreme Court and the numerous ministries and the agencies. In the city there are also public and cultural institutions of the state value, such as National Gallery of Australia and National Museum of Australia. The federal government makes the largest contribution to a gross product of the city and is the largest employer in Canberra. The word Canberra comes from the name of a dialect of the local tribe of Injabra relating to family group Nagunavat, namely, from the word Canberra, which can be translated from a classic language Nagunavat as the place for meetings. This name obviously was used for designation of a Karabora, or a ceremonial descent at the Australian natives which was carried out to time of seasonal migration of the tribe Nagunavat and on which a fir tree of Agrotis infusa butterflies scoops whose way of migration also passed every spring through this area. Arrangement of Canberra within the Australian Capital Territory. 7 districts of the city are designated in yellow color. Northern Canberra, Southern Canberra, Uden Valley, Balconnen, Western Shap, Tygernong and Gangling. Canberra occupies the space in 814.2 km. Also it is located near mountains Brindabella. Approximately in 150 km from east coast of Australia. The city is on the hilly plain at the height from 550 to 700 m. The highest point Mount Matura, 888 m. Nagamaga are distinguished to Ainslie from other heights Mount Taylor and Black Mountain. Canberra is surrounded with the woods which represents mixture of eucalyptus savannas, meadows, forest areas, swamps and dry eucalyptus forests. Through the city the Malonga River, which in one of places is partitioned by a dam, flows to maintain water level in the artificial Lake Burley Griffin located in the centre of Canberra. In a northwest part of Malonga flows into the Murrumbidgee River, which flows in the northwest direction towards the city of Yass in New South Wales. Within the Australian Capital Territory near the settlement Oaksisty it falls into the Malonga River, the Canberra River. Several streams, for example, of Jerrabomber and Yarralumla also fall into the Molongo and Murrumbidgee rivers. Two of streams Dininder and Tagaranon are blocked by dams and they form the lakes Zindera and Tagaranon. Before emergence of the Lake Burley Griffin, the territory of Canberra constantly was exposed to flooding. The climate of Canberra is subtropical continental, but with lines mountain. For this reason in Canberra always big daily fluctuations of temperature, and some are usually not excessively droughty. Because of the geographic latitude, altitude and distance from the coast in Canberra, 4 seasons are distinctly allocated. The climate of the majority of the Australian coastal territories, in which all capitals of states and territories of the country are located, is under the softening influence of the sea. In Canberra, summer hot and dry, winters cold with fogs and frequent frosts. Mountains and certain areas become covered by snow. The most high temperature registered in the city on February 1, 1968 reached 42.2 C. The lowest, registered on July 11, 1971, 10 C. In the winter in the city, snow sometimes drops out, but usually it quickly thaws. From September to March there are thunderstorms. The maximum quantity of rains drops out in the spring and in the summer. Abitani American architect Walter Byerly Griffin, one of the largest American architects of the 20th century. The downtown has the system of radial and ring streets and is broken into 2 perpendicular axes. The water axis lasting along the Lake Byerly Griffin and the overland axis lasting in the northeast direction from the Parliament Building along Anzac Parade Street, English Anzac Parade, to the Australian Military Memorial at the foot of Mount Ainslie. The territory known as a parliamentary triangle is created by 3 axes. The first reaches from Capitol Hill, where there is a Parliament building, along Avenue Sadrazesta, for the business centre around City Hill, the second, along Avenue Constituție, for the district defence, on Russell Hill, English Russell Hill, the third along Avenue Kings, to Capitol Hill. Planning of the rest of Canberra comes from 3 heights surrounding the city: Mountains Ainslie, Black Mountain and Bimbury. The central part of Canberra is generally constructed on the basis of Griffin's plan. For example, a parliamentary triangle. City Park Canberra has zonal structure. In her districts, the city centres, suburbs, industrial regions and villages are allocated. The city is divided into 7 districts, each of which is divided into areas and has the commercial and public centre. Districts were populated in the following sequence: Northern Canberra, A. The district is populated in 1920, the 1930th years, and subsequently extended up to the 1960th years. Now includes 14 areas. The Southern Canberra I moved into from 1920 to the 1960th years. Consists of 12 areas. Uden Valley. It is for the first time populated in 1963. 12 areas. Belconnen. It is for the first time populated in 1967. 25 areas. Western Sharp. It is populated in 1969. 8 areas. It is populated in 1974. 19 areas. Gangling. It is populated in the 1990s. Now 7 areas. Expansion is planned. Districts northern and southern Canberra mostly are built on the basis of Walter Burley Griffin's plan. In 1967, the Commission on Development of the National Capital adopted so-called WA Plan, the Plan of Future City Development of Canberra around a series of the trade and commercial territories known as the city centres, and connected among themselves by freeways which location remains otherwise. In the basis of why the district Taggernon, and on the ends, Balconnen and Gangling is located. Development of Canberra, including city planning and land use, is under complete control of the government. All earth of the Australian Capital Territory is leased for a period of 99 years at the national government. In the majority of districts of the city there are owned shops and, at the same time, are located near larger shopping centre which serves several areas adjoining with each other. Municipal services and schools often are near local shops or shopping centres. Many districts of Canberra are called in honour of the former Prime Ministers of Australia, the famous citizens of the country. Early settlers are used the names coming from languages of the Australian natives. Streets in certain districts of the city have a certain subject, for example, streets around Page. English Page. Bear names of the famous biologists and naturalists, and around Duffy. The Australian dams and dams. Diplomatic missions of the foreign states are generally located in the areas of Yarralamla, Deakin, and O'Malley. 3 industrial regions of the city are Fyshwick, Mitchell, and Holme. The House of Family Blandelsave, constructed about 1860, is one of the few buildings of Canberra built by the first European settlers of the city. Before emergence of the European settlement in the territory of modern Canberra, tribes of the Australian natives seasonally lived. Inaganavat also a Valgala. Lands to the southeast from the city were inhabited by the tribe, to the north, a Gundungurra, on the coast, and to the west, Virashar. According to archaeological data, the district of modern Canberra was populated with the person about 21000 years ago. The European research and settling of the territory of Canberra began at the beginning of the 1820th years. 4 expeditions were conducted to the period from 1820 to 1824. The settlement white in the area is dated 1823 when the workers employed by Joshua John Moore built the estate or a sheep breeding farm in the territory of the modern peninsula of Acton. English Acton Peninsula. Officially this territory was bought them in 1826 and Canberra is called. Throughout the 19th century the number of the European population of the district of Canberra gradually grew. Among Pervapostulates there was a family of the first Sydney dealer Robert Campbell, whose stone house became Royal Military College near Dantron subsequently. The family Campbell sponsored the settlement, providing employment to other families of Canberra which processed their lands, for example, near the modern suburb of Canberra, Vittingera. Among other known pervapostulates there were Maurice families and Gibisav, which owned from the 1830th to 1881 the estate Yaralamla, the residence of the Governor-General of Australia now. The oldest public building which remained in the central part of the city is the Anglican Church of John the Baptist, located in the neighbourhood of Reed, and consecrated in 1845. At the cemetery in the neighbourhood of Church there are numerous graves of pioneers of Canberra. Against the background of increase in a share of Europeans, the number of the Australian natives was reduced generally because of such liver diseases as smallpox and measles. Basic changes in life of the area, which at first was rural areas in the state of New South Wales and subsequently became the national capital, began with the debate on the Australian Federation at the end of the 19th century. After much debate about what city has to become the capital, Sydney or Melbourne, at last was reached a compromise. A new capital had to be built in the state of New South Wales, provided that it will be located not closer than 160 km from Sydney, and Melbourne for the period of city building had to become the temporary capital. The district of Canberra was chosen in 1908 after the researches conducted by the government topographer Charles Scrivener, and the government of New South Wales transferred the territory of the federal capital, as it began to be called subsequently, to the order of the federal government. After the held international competition on the best design of future capital on January 1, 1910, the Department of Internal Affairs of Australia chose Walter Burley Griffin's project, and Marion Mahoney Griffin. And in 1913 Walter Griffin was appointed the Director of Design and Design of the Federal Capital, and construction at once began. On March 12, 1913 the city was officially given modern name. It Lady Denman, the wife of the Governor-General of Australia, made Lord Denman. The ceremony took place on the hill Caradzong, on which the building of Parliament of Australia was located subsequently. Day of Canberra is annually celebrated in the city and the Australian Capital Territory on the second Monday of March. The federal government moved to Canberra on May 9, 1927, to the opening day of the temporary building of Parliament of the country. The Prime Minister of Australia, Stanley Bruce, English Stanley Bruce, officially lodged in the residence some days before it. The planned development of the city considerably slowed down in days of the Great Depression of the 1930th years and during World War II. Some projects, for example, of the building of Catholic and Anglican cathedrals, weren't implemented. The economy of Canberra considerably continues to depend on the federal government, and therefore it is subject to fluctuations depending on structure of the federal budget. Development of the city accelerated after World War II. At the same time, the capital overstepped the bounds of the initial development plan. After war, several ministries together with public servants moved to Canberra from Melbourne. At the same time, with assistance of the government, construction of housing estates began to provide with housing increasing population of the city. A northern and southern part of Canberra were built up in the 1950th years, the district of Udenvalley and Balconnen. in the middle and the end of the 1960th years. In 1964, construction of the artificial Lake Burley Griffin was finished. On January 27, 1972, before Parliament, the 10th Embassy of the Australian natives for the purpose of drawing attention to the rights of Indigenous people and the land questions was developed. On May 9, 1988, the new building of Parliament of Australia, more spacious than previous, was opened. In December 1988, after adoption of law on Parliament of the Australian Union, the Australian Capital Territory became completely self-governed education. In February 1989, the first elections were held, and already on May 11, 1989, there began the work the Legislative Assembly as a part of 17 Dicks. The first government of the Australian Capital Territory was created by the Australian Labor Party. The woman, Rosemary Follett, became the Chief Minister for the first time. On January 18, 2003, some districts of Canberra strongly suffered from wildfires, as a result of which 4 persons died, and 491 buildings and the main research telescope and laboratory and observatory of the Australian National University on the Mount Stromlo, English Mount Stromlo, were completely destroyed. Outside Canberra in the Australian Capital Territory, there is no settlement, Biggity Village. The Legislative Assembly of the Australian Capital Territory is at the same time City Council and the territorial government. The Assembly consists of 17 Dicks elected from 3 districts on the basis of proportional representation. These districts are Molongo, Canberra and Brindabella, who are represented respectively by 7, 5 and 5 deputies. The Chief Minister is elected members of Legislative Assembly. Subsequently, he appoints 4 ministers who together with the Chief Minister form executive body, which informally call office. The Australian National Government somewhat controls activity of the government of the Australian Capital Territory. In the administrative sphere, it is shown through work of official body of the National Capital, which bears responsibility for planning and development of those districts of Canberra which have the state value or there are in limits of the plan of Griffin, for example, a parliamentary triangle, the main access roads, areas where the government reserved the property right, are vacant hills and ridges which form a part of the Natural Park of Canberra. The national government also reserved some extent of control over Legislative Assembly by the Australian Capital Territory. The competence of the federal government is regulated by provisions of the Law on the Australian Capital Territory of 1988. This law is the constitution for Capital Territory and regulates a circle of questions under control of him, including the volume of legislature of assembly. Under the agreement with the government of the Australian Capital Territory, police functions in the city are carried out by the Australian Federal Police. Consideration of various criminal cases is carried out or in Magistrates' Court of the Australian Capital Territory, or in the Supreme Court of the Territory. The most serious crimes. Till 2008, prisons in the Australian Capital Territory weren't, and prisoners served the sentence in the state of New South Wales. On September 11, 2008, the Corrective Complex Alexander McConaughey N called in honor of the employee of a system of correctional facilities who died from AIDS, after attack of the convict on him using as weapon the syringe filled with the infected blood opened. The centre carries out both prison function and places of pre-trial detention of the territory. Civil and other not criminal cases are considered in tribunal of small claims and family court. The basis of the economy of Canberra is made by the government sector, first of all the federal government of Australia. A considerable part of the economy of the territory in 2014 was made by construction, healthcare, trade, the sphere of the higher education and services. As of May 2011, unemployment rate in Canberra was 3.4%, below the national level, which was 5.1%. In spite of the fact that in certain sectors of economy there is a shortage of labor. As a result of low unemployment rate and high employment in the state and commercial sectors in Canberra, the highest level of net income among all Australian capitals. The average week rate of the salary of the resident of Canberra is $17.02, while generally across Australia $1,485.80. The average cost of a house in the city in September 2009 equaled $511,820, below than in Sydney, but above than in Melbourne and Perth. The average cost of the house in September 2006 was $1 card, and in November 2006, $411,305. The average weekly rent in Canberra is higher than in any other state or the territory of Australia. For example, in January 2014 she made $410 a week, that the city on the third place on high cost in the country puts. The main spheres of economy are government, administration and defence, in which about 33.9% of residents of Canberra are engaged. In general, they give 29.8% of the gross domestic product of the territory. In public sector, the ministries of defence, finance, foreign affairs and trade, treasury are distinguished from employers. A part of institutions of the Australian Armed Forces are located in the city or near it. The former military base Fairburn, close to the International Airport of Canberra, was sold to operators of the airport and now serves VIP clients. In the city, a number of producers of the software, the serving government agencies, is also located. XSP Tower Software, Ruleburst and the distillery. As of 2013, the population of Canberra was 381,488 people, and population density -428 people on came. Rather large figure in comparison with other cities of Australia. According to a census of 2001, 1.2% of the population of the city were made by the Australian natives, and 6% were born outside Australia. The most part of the people who were born abroad are from the English-speaking countries, first of all, of Great Britain and New Zealand. A considerable share of immigrants is from Germany, Italy and Vietnam. The Russian community is small, total several hundreds of people, is presented by immigrants of 3 generations. Recently, the share of natives of the countries of East and Southern Asia grows. For most of residents of Canberra, the native language is English. Many know the Chinese, Italian, Croatian and Greek languages. Population of Canberra relatively young. Average age of residents is 32 years, and only 8.3% of the population, inhabitants, are more senior than 65 years. From 1996 to 2001, 9% of the population drove or left Canberra. That is the second highest level of mobility among other Australian capitals. As of May 2013, 45% of inhabitants of the Australian Capital Territory aged from 25 up to 64 years had the education preparation corresponding to the bachelor's level that above a national indicator, which is 29%. About 44% of the population of Canberra consider themselves Christians, either Catholics or Anglicans. Less than 3% practice other religions, 29% are atheists. As of 2012, the most typical type of crime are the crimes encroaching on property, illegal penetration into the room intentionally, and theft of cars. A number of murders and connected crimes, as well as attacks and rapes, below national level. The largest educational institutions of Canberra are the Australian National University, located near Acton, English Acton, and the University of Canberra, around Bruce. The Australian National University was founded in 1946 as the Research University, and various research works continue to be carried out. Both the Australian National University and the University of Canberra have own campuses not only in Australia, but also beyond her limits. In Canberra, campuses of two religious universities are also located. Australian Catholic University and Charles Stuyvesant University. Near the region of Campbell are located Academy of the Australian Armed Forces and Royal Military College. An Academy of the Australian Armed Forces students and graduate students study, and the Academy is an official campus of the University of New South Wales. To get the highest vocational training, it is possible in a campus of Institute of Technologies of Canberra. In February 2004, 140 public and private schools worked in the city. From them, 96 schools were state and 44 private. In 2006, the government of the Australian Capital Territory declared up to 39 schools closing, that it became program execution on the way by 2020. Updating of our schools, which provides creation of the integrated schools till 2020. Preschool institutions and elementary schools work in the majority of areas. Schools are usually located near open space. The National Museum of Australia was opened in 2001 and tells about public life of the country. A general architecture quite courageous for the city. In Canberra, many national monuments and institutions, for example, the Australian Military Memorial, English Australian War Memorial, the National Gallery of Australia, National Portrait Gallery, now located in the building of Old Parliament, English National Portrait Gallery, the National Library of Australia, the National Archive of Australia are located. The Museum and Art Gallery of Canberra and the National Museum of Australia. Many buildings of government agencies of the Australian Union located in Canberra. The Building of Parliament of Australia, the High Court and Royal Australian Mint are open for the public, including at the artificial Lake Burley Griffin the monument to James Cook, L. and the National Carillon is located. Are distinguished from other sites of the city Tellers Tower, the Australian National Botanical Garden on the Mount Black Mountain, the National Zoo and an Aquarium, On Adam Scrivener. The National Museum of Dinosaurs. Both the National Scientific and Technological Centre. In the Canberra Museum and Gallery located in the downtown, the exposition, devoted to local history and culture, is presented. Several historical buildings of the first European settlers are opened for the public. Farnsley Union and Taggernon, Magamaga and House Blandelsaf. The House Kelpkorsav in Redhilla is dated the 1920th years. The House Dantron around Campbell is one of the first farms in the area and now belongs to Royal Military College. In Canberra there is a large number of places where live music, and a set of theatres is executed. The Canberra Theatre, where the main concerts and statements are held. Levelin Hall, at School of Music of the Australian National University. On Childers Street, the Street Theatre is located. The oldest concert hall of Canberra is the Royal Albert Hall, opened in 1928, where initially acted the Canberra Repertoire Community. And the Canberra Philharmonic Hall. Annually at the University of Canberra, the musical Stounfest Festival is held. A large number of bars and nightclubs, which are generally located in the areas Dixon, Kingston, and in the city centre, also works in the city. In all centres of areas there are own theatres and movie theatres and also libraries. The National Festival of Folk Art, the Royal Show of Canberra, a festival of cause Samernets, the Canberra Multicultural Festival, and the Celebrate Canberra Festival, which is held annually within 10 days in March in connection with Day of Canberra, are distinguished from the most known cultural events. As the political centre of Australia, Canberra is the place of stay of the media main institutions, including the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, English Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the companies of commercial television. The central newspapers of the country have local bureaus in the city. Many news organizations are presented in Press Gallery of Canberra, in which the journalists hosting reports from National Parliament work. In the city, the daily newspaper Canberra Times, founded in 1926, and also a number of the free weekly newspapers distributed in the certain districts of Canberra, is issued. The free analog television stations, including 2 government, ABS and SCs, and 3 commercial, Prime, Win and Southern Cross 10, and also 4 digital, Prime D, with Win D, ABS and SC's news also work in the capital. Subscriber television services are available through the satellite television provided by the Foxtel company and the cable television provided by the local telecommunication company Transat. In Canberra also broadcast several radio stations. Radio 2 XM, Art Sound, Valley FM 89.5 and Radio 1 Rari, Capital Radio Network. 1053 2CA and 1206 2CC. Canberra FM Radio 104. and Mix 106.3. Besides local sports leagues in Canberra, there are also teams participating in national and international leagues. The most known of them are the Canberra Raiders and Act Brumbies, teams playing rugby leagues and rugby and already becoming champions in the leagues. Both teams hold house games at the central stadium of the city. Canberra has own basketball team of Canberra Capitals, which in 2006 and 2007 won in National Basketball League. Other popular games in the city are the netball, field hockey, ice hockey and cricket. At local stadium, Manuka Oval, play cricket and the Australian soccer. In Canberra, the marathon is annually carried out. Around Bruce, the Australian Institute of Sport, which is specialised educational and training institution, is located. In Canberra there is a set of small stadiums, golf courses, skate parks, tennis courts and pool complexes. The wide network of paths for cyclists works in the city. Water sports are widely presented. In Canberra 2 state hospitals work. 600-seater Hospital of Canberra. In the past Valley Hospital, located near Garran. And 174-seater Hospital Culveri, located around Bruce. Both hospitals at the same time are basic hospitals in which training of future health workers is provided. The largest private hospital of Canberra is John James's Hospital. Are distinguished from other private hospitals Private Hospital Culveri and National Capital Private Hospital Healthscope. In the past on the peninsula of Acton, the hospital, Royal Hospital of Canberra, was also located. However, on November 27, 1991 it was closed, and in 1997 is blown up to facilitate construction of the National Museum of Australia. The main vehicle in Canberra is the car. The urban policy pursued in the past positively affected the existing road system, which differs in high quality of paving. The districts of Canberra are connected among themselves by highways, the speed of the movement on which is limited to 80-100 km/h. In the majority of districts, areas are connected by access roads. The state bus carrier in Canberra is the Australian Capital Territory Internal Omnibus Network Company. Private carriers on the city and the neighbouring areas of New South Wales are Transborder Express and Dean's Bus lines. Nevertheless, bus traffic doesn't enjoy special popularity at locals. On this type of transport, only 4.6% of the population of Canberra move. 5.5% prefer to reach work or on foot or by bicycle. Private buses connect Canberra to the nearby cities in New South Wales. In the city there is a taxi. The main companies, Aerial Consolidated Transport and Capexpress. In 2015 in Canberra, construction of the Easy Railroad began. Opening of the first stage is planned for 2019. The city is connected by railway communication with other cities of Australia. The railway station of Canberra is located around Kingston. Between 1920 and 1922 the branch line crossed the Molonga River and directed on the north. However, after a flood it was closed and any more was never restored. In Canberra, the network of bicycle paths which connect all city districts and also a number of specialized mountain tracks for occupations by cycling is developed. Canberra is in 3 hour driving the car from Sydney on the Federal Road. That's Natsai Highway 23, English National Highway 23, which is connected with Natsai Highway 25, and in 7 hour from Melbourne on Natsai Highway 25. Till 2016 from the airport of Canberra only internal air flights, as a rule, to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth by Qantas and Virgin Australia Airlines were made. On September 21, 2016 at first the Singapore Airlines opened the first direct international flight, and in November 2016 already the Qatar Airways airline announced the international flights from Canberra. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.